Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
The fight over sewers in the city and county tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by Alan Crone. He's a special advisor to Mayor Jim Strickland. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
Kelly Rain is Senior Vice President with the Memphis Chamber. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Heidi Schaefer is Chairman of the Shelby County Commission. Thanks for being here again.
Great to be here again.
And Bill Dries is Senior Reporter with the Memphis Daily News. So we're talking about sewers today, and I'll start, I'm going to start with you, the Chairman of the County Commission. Why is this issue important? And the issue is that the city announced some months ago, if people didn't see it, that they would no longer be doing hookups outside the city of Memphis to the sewer system. This sounds like wonky behind the headline stuff, but it actually has far-reaching implications for the business community, for how the city grows, how the county grows. Why, from your point of view, is this an important issue?
Well, so let me start with where I agree with what the city is doing. What I think it makes sense with where the city is and its stated plan to right-size itself and that sort of thing. And since the annexation laws have changed, it makes sense for them to revamp their policy. So it makes sense to me that for new sewer to be run outside the city lines, that they would say, we're not going to be interested in doing that anymore. That makes sense to me, which means that the county needs to be gearing up to be doing its sewer system, which is something that normally has been done by municipalities. The county has very, very little sewer responsibility, so that's a big challenge for us, and it takes 3 to 5 years to put in a sewer system, so it's a big deal. Where I'm hoping that we can, through, not a fight, I didn't bring my boxing gloves, but I'm hoping that through discussion and through continued working on things and refining of policies, that for existing sewer lines that are already run out and where sewer development fees have already been paid, and all that we're waiting for is to be able to tap where that sewer line has already been run out, I'm wanting to make sure that those people can still tap into that sewer.
Okay, and we'll come back to some of that, but let me get Alan Crone involved. So from the mayor's point of view, why was this announcement made? I mean, what is the driving force behind it?
Well, I think the driving force behind this decision is basically, as a state, we're reversing 80 years worth of public policy to allow municipalities to grow into unincorporated parts of their county. And this is happening all over the country. Cities are realizing that they're too spread out, that they need to shrink, that they need to have density. And so it's just like anything else. If you're going to have these unincorporated parts of Shelby County that don't have municipal level of services, they don't need municipal level of services. And the more we add there, the more density we add in unincorporated parts of Shelby County, then the county's going to have to come in, as the commissioner has said, and provide municipal level of service, starting with sewers. And I don't think that that's in the best interest of Germantown, Bartlett, Memphis, Millington, or any of the municipalities to have municipal and urban growth in unincorporated Shelby County. I agree with the commissioner, and the mayor agrees with the commissioner, that we're going to work with the developments. There's about 70 developments that are
74
that are in some stage of development, and we're going to look at each of those and determine if there are legal requirements for us to do what needs to be done. Some of them we may have a disagreement over. Some of them, as I've said before, when you reverse policy like this, it's like musical chairs. The music is going to stop, and there may be some people that don't have a seat. But I would encourage those developers to look inside the city limits. There's plenty of land available there, and the resources the city was going to use to extend sewers and provide infrastructure out in unincorporated Shelby County, we'd like to now focus that on undeveloped parts of the city.
But do you worry, and then I'll go to Kelly, do you worry though that will not drive people into the city, but it'll drive development into Fayette County and DeSoto County?
That's already happening. The more we drive development east, north, and south, the more development's going to go out ahead of that. I would say most of the people who live in these unincorporated areas don't want any more density there. We haven't gotten any calls, as far as I know, from people who live in those areas saying, hey, we want more sewer connections. It's basically just developers who want to build municipal style developments in unincorporated Shelby County.
Okay, Kelly, from the point of view of the chamber, which obviously a lot of developers, real estate people are members of the chamber, your take on this, and is this going to stifle development at a time when, you know, I mean, Memphis needs its tax base to grow, the area needs to grow, there's been a lot of momentum, to quote Mayor Strickland, but obviously I don't think anyone's satisfied with how much development has happened and how much increase in the tax base has happened. So your point of view.
Absolutely. We agree with the chairman's comment that we support the policy behind this, which is to incentivize and encourage growth within the city limits. I mean, I think we all agree that a strong city makes for a strong county and a strong region, and that's what we need, is to figure out ways to make that happen and facilitate that. I think our concern about this is that we have projects, we have developers, we have real estate projects, we have economic development projects that are kind of caught in this no man's land, this limbo period, where the message just came out that there was going to be a change in policy, and we really didn't have an opportunity to plan for how to address the needs of those companies that want to come and locate an area like here, where we are now, or you know, in different parts of the community that are impacted by that.
Right. Let's go back to Heidi, and then I'll go to Bill.
Yes, and just to piggyback on what Kelly said, Kelly Rain said, I've already known of a few deals that have fallen through because there was no guarantee that the sewer was going to actually be able to be done. And you know, with Amazon in front of us, there are areas, there's one area up in Millington that would be a good potential site of 200 some acres, but it's in unincorporated, and so that takes that off the table. And I think just the fact that the city and the county haven't come to some good formalized policies on it, where we can be clear, is making already some business deals go south, and at a time when the whole rest of the state is able to take advantage of the burgeoning economy. I hate for West Tennessee and Shelby County in particular to get to, you know, lose a step or two in that.
I want to come back to some of that, but I'll get Bill involved.
Alan, from the city's perspective, is that happening? Are we losing?
I'm not aware of any major deal that has fallen through simply because of lack of sewers. If there's a policy, there's exceptions that can be generated for policy, and we're not here to cut off development. We're here to do smart development. And you know, if Amazon said we want to locate near Millington, and Millington couldn't send sewers out there, then we would certainly be in that conversation. The question, and I think one of the good things that has come out of this is this conversation. As a community, we need to have a conversation about, do we want to develop unincorporated Shelby County into an urban area, perhaps at the cost of the other municipalities, or do we want to keep it suburban or maybe even below suburban? I think we have to have that conversation, and that's not something for the city just to unilaterally say. That has to be part of the discussion at the county commission and so forth, but we have to take into account the needs of the whole county.
Mm-hmm. Heidi, you all got a price estimate on what it would cost for the county to get deeper into the business of sewers. What is that price estimate?
Well, I hate to say a price estimate right now. We're going to get a more positive update at our next committee meeting, but we're talking millions and millions of dollars. But those things come out of, there's very specific funding that develops sewer. The county can definitely gear up to do it. The one thing I do want to be clear, though, is that I don't anticipate unincorporated Shelby becoming more municipal. The difference is that because of the way the soil is here, and I know way more about sewer than I ever wanted to know, okay? But there are certain types of soil, and because of our water table and everything else, that septic systems won't work. We have a big deal out between Spring Creek and Cotton Creek and sewers where I've learned a lot, and you can't put in septic systems there without having problems where it'll bleed over into the groundwater, which doesn't make TDEC happy and doesn't make our citizens happy, right? So sewer is it is a big part. It's not necessarily a municipal service. You can still run sewer out into a more rural area, keep rural. I'm not trying to make that into like a super suburb. I'm not in favor of trying to provide all municipal services to people who are living and paying taxes for a rural area. I think those need to be preserved, but we can't have septic running over into the groundwater.
Does this get back, Kelly, from just a pure business, and you all are, the Chamber does a lot of, trying to recruit businesses into town. Alan's saying, look, we're going to accommodate an Amazon. I think everyone knows that. I mean, the city's going to do anything they could if Amazon really was looking at coming here. But is there, for the smaller deals, the less flashy ones, just this uncertainty? People always talk about business uncertainty kills business development. Is that your concern? Is that what you're hearing from, I think you mentioned the banks and the developers and so on?
Absolutely. I think one of the things when companies come here and invest is they want to know that there's stability in the climate here from a regulatory standpoint, from a stable tax rate standpoint, from all those kind of things. And it's gotten highly, highly competitive in the last 20 years. We're competing with Mississippi, with Arkansas, and other places around the country and the globe. And we have to be very, very sensitive to anything that might impact that. But on the flip side of that, as soon as we were made aware of this, we have been meeting with the mayor and his administration, and they've been extremely receptive to working through these scenarios. So that's the message that we're putting out, is if there is a project in place that's moving through the pipeline, so to speak, we're trying to facilitate a resolution with the administration, and they've been very supportive of that.
Okay, Bill.
Alan, this took place in August, I believe that the word went out. Tell me what you're reviewing in this interim time. What is it? Just a matter of here's our obligation as it exists, and this is what we're going to do, or is it possible that there could be some change in what the city's policy and obligation is at the end of your review?
I don't know that there'll be a change in the policy. There may be some exceptions to the policy granted, either because of legal obligations or just for development obligations. There's some talk about some voluntary annexations where the business owners say, look, we'll be annexed so that we can have these sewer extensions. I think the commercial areas are a little bit easier to deal with than the residential ones. And so, like I say, the 74 deals that are on the table now, we're going to look through those. And but I don't think that the overall policy is going to change. But there may be some exceptions to the policy on a going forward basis.
Does this fold into what the city was already doing in terms of the areas proposed for or considered for de-annexation?
Yeah, I think the difference between the Strickland administration and some of the previous administrations is we've kind of embraced the idea of de-annexation. It's a tough knot to untie, as the chairman knows. We've worked sometimes together, sometimes not so together on it, because we have different, there are different interests out there. But one thing, the goal I think we share is that 340 plus square miles is not a manageable area for a city, and it's impossible to police efficiently and cheaply. It's impossible to provide fire service, and it really is impossible to provide the transit that we need for people to get around. And one of the things you need for transit is density, and that would be one area where the county and the city could work together to make it more desirable to live inside the city limits. Mayor Strickland knows that all of this is academic if we don't build a better city, one that is brilliant at the basics, where we've got roads paved, streets policed, fires put out, all of those things that the mayor talks about every day. So this is one piece of a larger puzzle.
Okay. Heidi, from your point of view, I mean, it's separate from the specifics of the sewer. Do you agree with what Alan said about the city needing to de-annex, the city needing to get more density? Again, you don't like the idea that the two deals that have fallen through and the 74 projects that are in limbo. But the big picture of what he's talking about and the de-annexation prospect and kind of the refocusing inward, are you on board with that?
I am. I mean, I think it makes good sense, and that's one of the things that we've really enjoyed about working with the city administration is that we think that they're really looking at things not from an old okay, well, this is how we've always thought, this is how we've always worked kind of thing, but like, okay, what's going to work for us now? What cities are doing things? How are they, how are they fitting into the whole community? What can we do as partners? I'm a part of a group called CEOs for Cities, where we go around and we look at different models different areas have done. We're about to go to Phoenix to look at what they've done, because they have kind of a similar setup with us, with a real strong urban core, but then lots of also strong suburban areas around and some rural areas. And so we're trying to, we need to get with the times. And what I love about this is that we are actually having conversations that yield something. Too often, conversations between governmental units just end up with everybody suing everybody, and not much getting dissolved, not much really getting solved. So this is, and we're already making progress. When they first started this, they said, well, we might maybe come up with exceptions, but fewer than 5 on the hand. That was the word that came to me directly, and I was like, I'm looking at, this massive amount. But as the facts started to cycle through, I think that they've, become very, as they became more sensitized to it, they want to be good partners just like we do.
Let me go to Kelly, because you were very involved in the de-annexation fight, 2 years ago at the legislature. The chamber was very involved in terms of, there was a kind of forced de-annexation that the business community, and I think most, not all, but most of the political community did not want to have happen. The city has talked about a more structured de-annexation. Where does all that stand? I don't know if I should look at you or you, but where is that proposal to de-annex?
There's legislation that's still pending. There are 2 years in this legislative session, so when the General Assembly convenes again in January, there will be legislation in front of them. The de-annexation bill is still
But is this
up
a
for
bill
discussion.
that you all are, this is not the forced de-annexation bill, or is this the bad bill or the good bill?
This is the bad bill with some great amendments that allow a local process that's underway in Shelby County to play out.
Because that was always, I think, not to refight this, but it's going to be a big deal if it gets passed. There were a lot of aspects to this that the chamber and others didn't like, but part of it was that it was being done at the state level. It was being imposed on Memphis. You all argued for, we need to get smaller, but we need to be able to do it in a more surgical way and do it with local input.
Yes.
So that's what you think is on the table?
Yes, the amendment that passed through committee, that is still on the table, is my understanding.
Okay, Bill.
So we have unincorporated areas that are not part of anyone's annexation reserve area, and I'm thinking about the Shelby Forest area in general. How does the county handle sewer for that area, which is not ever going to be a part of anyone's incorporated city limits?
Well, it depends on whether they need sewer there or whether they can do septic. And, it all depends on how the soil perks, and don't think about that too deep or you're going to be nauseated. But it does depend on that. There are some areas where septic works, and in that case, that's an easy thing to do. Other places, you might have to go to a step steg system, which is what we're looking at as a solution out for Cotton Creek. There are different things besides just a full gravity-fed system that can be done to facilitate, but all of that takes a good amount of time. It takes a great cooperative effort with TDEC, and it takes a lot of time. And you're talking about digging up roads. It's timely. If everything went perfectly, 3 years would be the quickest we'd be able to do it. So we're gearing up on our end, and we really appreciate what the city is doing to try to help us work through those other pieces.
And we have 6 suburban towns and cities who have varying degrees of wastewater treatment and sewer services that they provide. Are they at the table on this?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, they have been with me. I've been meeting and calling. I think they're getting tired of me calling them now to give them updates. But some of them, like Germantown, are very reliant on the city of Memphis's sewer system. Others, like Bartlett, are partially reliant. And then there are other areas like Arlington and Lakeland that are completely independent. And so they're like, well, thank you for the communication, but this doesn't really affect us, except that please come out and build our way, And, so I think there's an opportunity for us to be able to, to make sure that we don't kill the growth that Kelly was talking about.
Alan, what is the city's take on the role of the suburban towns and cities?
Well, I would say that their interests should be very similar to ours in trying to get density inside their own municipal boundaries. During the de-annexation debate 2 years ago, Senator Mark Green asked what I thought now, in hindsight, is a very prescient question. He asked Doug McGowan when he was testifying, when the city did all of these annexations, was all of the blight within inside the city ameliorated? And of course the answer was no. The annexations out eastward from the city is what caused the blight inside the city. So at some point, I would respectfully ask the county commission to really carefully consider whether the county ought to get in the sewer business at all, because all of that development that we're talking about could be diverted into the other municipalities. Lakeland is talking about doing a big development off exit 20 there on Interstate 40. So it's not just the city of Memphis looking to densify. These other municipalities may make that choice as well. And what they choose to do in their own annexation areas, and I don't really know what the future of annexation areas are. The mayor believes we've seen the last annexation in Shelby County in our lifetime. That's kind of up to them how they want to drive density. But we have got to get Berkeley and Orange Mound and Raleigh and Fraser and Whitehaven and South Memphis. I could go on naming neighborhoods that need economic development, that need revitalization, that need rehabilitation. So that's what we're trying to drive.
And Kelly, talk to me about the dynamic that the chamber sees from its point of view. That there's always been, I think, kind of this tension between who really drives development. Do the local governments drive development? Do the developers essentially pick where that direction is going to be? It seems as if it's a little of both.
Yeah, I think it is a little of both. We support a market-based approach to that. One thing that we've really gotten behind lately is working with our partners at MAR, the Association of Realtors, and the home builders to come up with a housing strategy to really focus on those areas where this investment's already occurring that Alan just referenced, and really trying to leverage that by incentivizing. I mean, we know that there's a lack of residential growth inside the city boundaries, so we're working to develop a strategy for that, and I think the timing's right for that with Memphis 3.0, that long-range strategic planning process that the city's going under right now. It's a really good opportunity for us to fit into that and look at those neighborhoods. We had a blight committee a couple years ago, I think, with the city and county, and one of the things they looked at that was really interesting was those neighborhoods and precincts where property values were not falling, but we're just kind of on the cusp of that, and really trying to maybe laser focus our efforts to encourage residential redevelopment in those areas that were kind of on the edge, and mapping those out. So in addition to the big projects that are wonderful, the Crosstown and Graceland areas and things like that going on, really getting down into some of the neighborhoods that Alan just referenced and trying to encourage development, make it affordable for middle income housing to grow there.
We just have a couple minutes left, and I was going to shift. Did you want to get one more word in on that? Yeah, that's fine.
So the thing that the elephant in the room, though, is when we talk about redeveloping the neighborhoods that Alan was talking about, and I agree, but crime is the issue, and you can't force people to buy and build and develop in areas where crime hasn't been taken care of. And so the reality is that if people don't think it's a good investment to move into areas that are crime-ridden, and there's not sewer other places to go in Shelby County, they will push out beyond our borders at a greater rate, or just to choose to develop there. If they're coming in, there's lots of land, low tax, low bureaucracy out beyond our borders. So I like it that we're collaborating to try to make sure that we're an attractive option.
Well, and it's a good segue because we have Mayor Jim Strickland on the show next week, and we'll certainly talk to him about where he is with the, rebuilding, as he says, the police force. With just a couple minutes left, you all are involved in lots of other things. You have raised some issues, Heidi, about the FedEx Forum non-compete and how that's playing out in terms of Graceland, building another arena. Your thoughts, your concerns on the Forum contract?
Well, so it did seem at the time, 20 years ago, about that it was awfully exclusive, and I don't like the fact that it is right now, of course, looking at the letter of the law, where Graceland and the guest house wouldn't be able to develop an area for concerts that are much smaller in venue, and so that the only option they have, if they don't want to go to the Forum because it's either too big or they just don't like that venue or it's too expensive, we're pushing them down into Mississippi. And so I'm hoping that they'll be able to do what we've been able to do city county-wide and come up with something that would be a good accommodation to still allow that to go forward. We want, you know, there's a win-win. When we looked at how the number of concerts that would have gone to the FedEx Forum otherwise, you know, that would have been taken by the Graceland area piece, it was only one, and that was the one that the Graceland folks themselves were putting on. It was an Elvis retrospective. So, I mean, I think that there's a path for everybody to come up with something good.
And we'll do more on this. Bill obviously has been writing, but I wanted to get your take in. And Alan, you're involved with the Riverfront Task Force.
Yes.
What is the status of that? A big glossy plan with a whole lot of great ideas came out some months ago. There's a task force, and as I've joked with your boss, Mr. Strickland, another task force about the riverfront yet again. But what is this one going to come to some kind of actionable plan, and is it going to happen soon?
The concept that the Studio Gang presented, I think, has been embraced by lots of stakeholders downtown, and we are working on the various components of that: Tom Lee Park, Mud Island, the Fourth Bluff area, and I think you'll see some announcements on that very soon. Okay, well, we will leave it there. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week. Good night.